Hey guys, welcome to episode 1, the official episode 1. I got a lot going on here, so hold on one second. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about text messages, collecting text messages, and I have another solution for. Hold on one second. Got some audio issues going on. Hold on a second. So this is my first time having a guest on the show, and that's why we have the pre-show, because we need to work out some kinks. So let me make sure I've got everything.
Can you still hear me?
Ready? Yes, I can still hear you, Joe. You're gonna meet Joe in a second. Okay. I wanted to let you know that I have a different solution for comments this time. So I see a bunch of comments coming in. Elise has been here for a little while. Ernesto, Kathleen, Jennifer with a G. That's cool. Tracy and Ramesh. Thank you for joining us today. So today's question is, have you dealt with text messages in productions before, either having to produce them or receiving them? Just curious if you have had to do that yet. I have done it the old school way, which is nothing fancy, let me tell you. So, let's see. Okay. Just want to make sure that I have everything in place here. Okay, so I did make the timer shorter this time because last time I stopped it, and also I had a different opening so that you guys don't, have to watch me getting ready. So hopefully you enjoyed the view. The reason I did that particular view is so my close friends know I have a thing for water. So if I'm stressed or anything, if I go somewhere where I have a view of water, it de-stresses me right away. So I will probably have a bunch of those different ones where I open up the live with a beautiful view of water or something else that looks sort of zen. Because as you know, working in the legal industry, we can all use some zen. Okay? Um, so today we have a guest on the show, so there's a lot of technical stuff going on here, and it's my first time doing it. So, as I said last week, please be patient with the technology of things. Also, we're going to we're going to go over some software that my guest has created, which is pretty darn cool, and then we're going to see if you guys have any questions. So, all right. We have a few more seconds left. Let me Ernesto does it very often and he uses two different programs. So let's see if he likes, let's see if you like Ernesto. Let's see if you like what we come up with today. That'll be interesting. All right, so let's officially start off the show. Welcome to the Legal Tech Mastery Show. Legal Tech Mastery Show. I got to get that down. I'm very happy to see you guys here, and I'm really excited about today's episode because my friend Joe reached out to me months ago, and a little story. We actually, I knew that I wanted to have him on my new show, and when it was being, when I thought I was going to do pre-recorded instead of live, we actually already recorded it. But now, thankfully, he likes me. So when I said that I could would you mind redoing it live? First of all, live didn't scare him. He said sounds like fun because he's a techie. So, anyways, let me bring on Joe real quick here so you can see him. There's Joe. Say hi, Joe.
Hi, everybody. And yeah, it scares me a little bit, Amy.
Okay, all right, good, because it scares all of us a little bit. Okay. All right, so this is the agenda for today. We're gonna talk a little bit about, with Joe, a little bit about the background of why he created the app, why he created the solution, in the first place. And also, after we did our recording of the video, the interview before, he actually moved a little bit further with his app and he created a video. So I'm going to play that video for you because it gives a good overview. We were going to walk through it manually before, but now he has this video. So I'm going to show you the video, and then we're going to go over some specifics from the video that I think we need to clarify to make sure everybody understands. And then we'll have some Q&A. So I put a comment in the top of the feed last night to remind you that if we get a lot of questions, a lot of commentary going on in Facebook, I'm going to need to weed out the ones that are questions for Joe. So if you could add the word ask in front of your question, that allows me to A, see it better, and B, in this new application I'm using, I can actually search for the ones that have ask, which is awesome. Okay, so we're going to switch to Joe and me, which is pretty cool. Let's make sure that we still hear Joe. Joe, do we still hear you?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent.
Audio is a good thing. Okay,
Yeah.
so welcome to Legal Tech Mastery Show, Joe. Thank you so much. I'm very thankful to you for reaching out to me in the first place and sharing this really cool tool, and also for saying yes twice to being on the show. So thank you.
Well, thank you for having me, Amy. This is pretty exciting.
Okay, so let's start with what is the name of the app that you created and who is it for?
So it's called Legal Text Collector. It's an Android app basically for custodian self-collection of text messages. Now, some people use it to back up their text messages and things like that, but its main purpose is to make self-collection easy.
Okay. And then what prompted you to create this app in the first place?
Well,
I know you had a couple reasons.
Maybe
Go ahead.
Yeah. So, maybe about 7 years ago, a friend of mine who's in family law was just talking with me, and my background is in computer programming. So she says, all I want to do is print text messages. Why is this so hard? Now, a lot of changes have happened in the last 7 years with phones and stuff. And also in that time, on who you knew me into working in e-discovery for a while. And so after I did that, I thought, hey, I should just give it a shot. And Legal Text Collector is what came out of that.
Okay. And I remember you told me when you first met with me and demoed the app for me that you actually worked for 2 years at an e-discovery provider, and you said that you saw the results of forensic collections attempting to collect text messages, and you said something along the lines of it was hit or miss whether it was accurate and got everything. You can probably say it better than I can, but I'm just reminding you that I want to talk about that for a minute.
I mean, I don't want to say anything bad about the forensics.
I know.
ways of doing it. It just turned out that I thought it was a lot of effort to do it in some cases that we had, and so I got familiar with the territory working at a vendor, and I thought that there could be something that was easier for just people to use, and it would work for a lot of cases that didn't need the forensic deep dive that is a little bit more effort.
Yeah, I mean, actually, in general, when I teach litigation support even to new lawyers, um, there's a time and a place for forensics, definitely. And then
Mm.
there's other times where we don't need to hire a forensic person. We can collect it ourselves as long as we know enough about what we're doing. But in your case, you created something that's so easy to use. And I thought a lot of people that follow Litigation Support Guru are at small to mid-sized firms that could definitely appreciate this. So Ernesto, our first question, Joe, is Ernesto's asking if the app is only for Android. So you want to go ahead and address that before we do the demo?
It is only for Android, and there are the main reason for that is that iPhone is a little bit different. In some ways easier, in some ways harder, but iPhone doesn't allow third-party apps to access text messages. So you can't make an app for iPhone that gets the text messages directly. Typically, the way that iPhones work is, or iPhone text message collections work, is they'll extract the messages from an iCloud backup or an iTunes backup.
Right.
So there's an intermediary step, and that's not what this does.
Right.
So.
Okay. I remember learning how to do that when the iPhone just came out and we were doing backups through iTunes. I remember being curious as a litigation support person, diving into, the files that it actually backed up just to see, because it's pretty cool. All right, so let's watch your demo. And so this is about 3.5, 4 minutes long, you guys. So let's go ahead and cut to that now.
Today I'm going to show how easy it is to print text messages using Legal Text Collector, an Android app written by me. Legal Text Collector is free to install on Google Play. Text Collector works by copying messages into collections, then lets you share collections so you can review them on an ordinary computer. Since I've just installed the app, I don't have any collections yet. I tap New Collection to start one. You can pick date filters if you like, but for now I'll just leave the date filters blank to collect all messages. The first time you make a collection, Android will prompt you to allow Text Collector some permissions. It needs access to your phone book so it can associate names with numbers, and it obviously needs permission to read your messages. Unfortunately, Google made this dialog a bit confusing. It says permission to read and send messages, even though Text Collector only needs to read them. Text Collector never sends text messages. They stay on your phone until you choose to share them. If you like, you can report usage statistics to me, the developer. The reports are completely anonymous, and you're free to say no, but I'll say yes. I have about 8,000 messages on this phone, so collecting them will take a minute or two. In the meantime, I'll do a smaller collection. Back in the date filter screen, I'll pick a starting date of April 1st this year. At the bottom of the screen, I can see that this will collect messages from April until now. I personally don't use text messages all that often, so this won't collect very many, and it'll finish soon. Now that it's finished, I can see that I have 342 messages since April. Tapping on a collection lets me see how it will look. The first page is a summary of what I collected. Zooming in, I can see my name, phone number, the date range filter I picked, and so on. For lawsuits and other disputes, you'll often want to use messages with just a particular person. Text Collector doesn't let you filter by person before collection, but it organizes messages so that you can easily find someone. The Find button brings up a list of names and phone numbers in the collection. If I want to see the messages between me and one of my test phones that I named Xavier, I just tap his name. The first message here is a group message from me to Xavier and Zena. You can see both names as recipients. Next is a video I sent. Videos and other attachments become separate files in the output. Pictures, however, get rendered directly in the PDF. We can see this because after the video, I'm sending Xavier a painting I made. Down near the bottom, Xavier replied to me, somewhat doubtfully, and I sent him back a message with an emoticon. Sadly, Text Collector doesn't yet display emoji, so it looks like a black diamond. Once you're satisfied that the collection is what you need, you can export it off the phone using the Share feature. This is the only part that requires money, and you can share as many collections as you like with just one purchase. Tapping Share takes me to a screen where I can choose how I want to share my messages. A collection this small would be easy to send by email, but I like Dropbox, so I'll use that. Google Drive, Microsoft OneDrive, and others would also work. Now I can switch to an ordinary computer. In my Dropbox, there's now a file called messages.zip. I'll just unzip it to see what's inside. These files are named for people in my collection and numbered in case people have the same name. Here I can see there's a PDF for Xavier's messages. Now this is just a completely ordinary PDF and I can print it just like I would print any other. But what about that video? In the PDF, notice that it's called Attachment 3. When someone has attachments, they'll appear in a folder named after the PDF. In Xavier's folder here, I can see that attachment number 3 is a video. That's all there is to it. For details, see LegalTextCollector.com and enjoy printing your messages.
Okay, so awesome video, Joe.
Thanks.
And for those of you out there that are my close friends, you can probably understand why I initially liked Joe when I first met him, because he's sarcastic and he has a great sense of humor. So, Joe, I have a couple of questions. You're welcome. If somebody wants to share a specific conversation, this is the first thing that came to mind for me way back when we would first start talking, but I want to make sure people understand. So, normally, if you think about the scenario of why they're collecting the text messages, they're going to be a conversation they're looking for, between two people, the person with the phone and another person. So, they're going to want to zero in on a conversation. So we just saw how it works, and I know the answer to this, but go ahead and explain.
Right. Okay. So what happens is that it'll always collect all of the text messages in the date range that you selected. And that's because that just minimizes the possibility for error. So if you choose up front, oh, I want from this person or this person, it could be they used different phone number, or they weren't in your address book in the right way, or something like that. So by collecting everything, it makes it harder to accidentally miss some things. There are also some complications with group messages, but at the end of the day, what it does is it collects all of those and then it just organizes them so that each conversation is an individual PDF, including any group messages with that person, which is a little different from how conversation ordering normally works on Android, where there is where group messages become separate conversations from individual messages, which can also make things a little easy to miss. In any case, it puts this all together in a zip, and so the idea is that once you download the zip to an ordinary computer, you can easily just grab the PDF that you want, and if there are present any attachments, such as videos, GIFs, because they're moving, don't render well in a PDF, so they would become attachments as well, that sort of thing.
Oh, it's good to know about GIFs for those GIF-loving people. I also laughed in your demo video. I laughed when you got to the part where I don't send many text messages. I'm like, what are you, living under a rock, Joe? Okay, so this for you guys, this is a shot of his website, which some of you may have already gone to. And he's done a pretty good job of how long has it been out, Joe? Remind me. Yeah, officially been, people getting it?
The 1.0 release was in June. So that's when I released it to the public. I had a period of a month or two of an open beta before then.
So I
So
saw that I went to the Google Play page because I'm an iPhone person, but
mhm.
and it had 1,000 downloads. Is that right? It looks like
Yeah, so Google Play shows you you're between.
this
It
range
has
is,
these
yeah,
thresholds, so
yeah,
it's actually about 2,500 downloads right now.
2,500.
So
Okay,
yeah.
and I saw some good feedback too from people not even in legal. They're, people that want to back
Mhm.
up their text messages, which, I used to do that a long time ago. I don't anymore, but yeah. Okay, so this screen right here in the app, I just want to clarify because, the video went a little fast for this discussion. But what can we do with dates? Like, how does the date filter work?
It's very basic. You just pick a starting date and an ending date. Both of them are optional. So if you pick just an ending date, it'll be all of the messages on the phone on that date or before it. Um, Likewise with the starting date. So, and if you don't pick any, you just collect all the messages.
Okay. I mean, I did it with you that first time, and I thought it was pretty easy. Um,
Thanks.
I'm checking in on the question. So,
Okay.
Bill wants to know. Hi, Bill. Bill wants to know if you have any plan to render emojis. I think that's addressed on your website, but you want to answer that?
Uh, yes, it there. I've written about it some on my website and on my blog, and as it turns out, it's it's a ridiculously difficult problem to render emoji in PDF due to fonts. Right now, there are four competing standards for color fonts, and it's so. For example, Android uses a different font from a Mac. So even so, if you put that font in the PDF, it's not going to render on the Mac, for example. So it gets pretty complicated, unfortunately.
Okay.
In the in the shorter term, what I'd like to do is add an option to export them in text format. So at that point, you have the Unicode characters, and they won't have the same font as is on the phone,
Yeah.
but you'll be able to see them with whatever font is installed on your computer.
Okay. All right. Um, Bill, I'm going to come back to your other question in a few seconds. And then I think Ernesto, I'll address yours at the same time that I go with Bill's question. All right, so I just want to draw attention to this again. You mentioned it in the video. It's one of the first things you see. You call it a summary, but also it's rendered in the zip file. So you have this, I think you called it a 0.summary.pdf. What is it called?
Information. Yep.
Yeah. So, so it sorts to the top, and it's just an overview of, what you did, which is, I think,
Mm-hmm.
is very helpful that you provide this.
Oh,
And
thank
then
you.
this is, again, you showed an example of what it looked like from the phone. I wanted to make it a little bit bigger, but I also wanted to remember that because you worked in e-discovery when you were designing the app, you made it easy to redact. Yay for Joe! So you guys can imagine how you could easily redact a whole row of information or even, blocks of information. It should be easy
Mhm.
to redact, which is awesome that Joe's context is there for us. So that's pretty cool. Um,
Thanks.
you have anything to add?
Well, I do always like to warn people that redacting PDF is not quite as simple as just drawing a box over the text. You need to make sure the text is actually removed. So,
So I cut off the video, but at the end of his video, he actually added what's called an end card, and he added a link to one of my Fast Tip Fridays that talks about how to redact a PDF, which is hilarious. Thank you, Joe. All right. So again, you whizzed by this, in the demo, and I just want to
mhm,
clarify for everybody. So it's free to do all the collecting and everything, and then,
mhm.
which is good because you can, up to a certain point, you can see what the results are. Is that right? On the phone,
That's right.
right? Yeah. And then if you want to get it off the phone, and we need to get it off the phone for what we're going to do next with it, then it's a purchase in the Google
Mhm.
Play Store. And right now, I think it was 199 when I checked it yesterday.
Uh, that's right.
Is that the
So
current
for
price?
now, it may change the price a little bit, but for now, I've set purchasing the sharing feature at $1.99, and that allows you to share as many collections as you want.
Yeah,
You
that was
can
the
make.
other cool thing is the, let me see if I can go back to that. Um, yeah, you can share as many. So once you
Mhm.
pay the nominal charge, and you can keep sharing collections over and over again, which is
Right.
cool. All right, and then so I remember when you and I talked before, some people are just going to want to email the zip file.
Mhm.
Is there a file attachment size limitation? Like, will it tell you if the collection is too large to email, or is that pretty much not going to happen, or what?
Right. So text collector itself doesn't have a limit on the size of the collection, but Gmail, for example,
Gmail
has a
does,
20
yeah.
megabyte limit
Yeah.
now. So if it's above 20 megabytes, it would pop up a little dialogue here that would say, "This is a large collection. You might want to choose something other than email."
Just like it does
So,
now when we try and email things that are too large.
right.
Okay, so but adding it to Dropbox, because remember, this is the custodian themselves, and it's very easy for them to
Mhm.
do this, and it's a clean way of doing it. It just makes sense. It's very intuitive. So the person you're collecting the text messages
Mhm.
from, even if you invite them into your law firm and sit down with them in the conference room and walk them through it, it's still easy. Most people will save it to Google Drive or Dropbox, like you did in the example.
Mhm.
And then I just want to clarify that what you get initially is a zip file, which is cool.
Right.
And it's called messages, and it puts it where you tell it to, right? And
Right.
it's whatever
I
size it needs to be, right?
That's right. While we're on the topic of Google Drive and Dropbox and
Yeah.
what have you, I would like to mention there is an issue with Google Drive where, for whatever reason, it doesn't seem to deal well with the zip file. So it'll show you the listing of what's in it. But I've had people ask, why can't I open the PDF? Well, it turns out that you actually have to download it from Google Drive before you can actually open the PDFs in that zip. So just want people to be aware of that.
That's good to mention.
Mhm.
I personally don't care for Google Drive because it just doesn't work like Dropbox.
I
And then
personally prefer Dropbox. I like it a lot.
Google Drive adds extra steps
Mhm.
to everything where Dropbox
Yeah.
doesn't. Okay. And then the last thing is another shot of the files, since everybody watched the video go by real
Mhm.
quick. You've accounted for the fact, you've enumerated them. You accounted for the fact that you might end up with some duplication, right,
Right.
in file names
Yeah.
and stuff like that. And then you mentioned in the video that attachments that can't be rendered in the PDF go into a folder with the same name and then a suffix of attachments. Did I say that right?
That's right. Yep.
Okay.
Exactly
All
right.
right. Okay, cool. So let's go back to this view where I can see more of you. Um, and then I want to answer a few questions that came up,
Okay.
and then have a just remembered that I need to provide you guys with a link to the handout. Um, I'm going to put it in the comments. So I will do that in a minute. While you're answering questions, I'll take care of that, Joe. So one of the questions is Ernesto wants to know, can you isolate text messages between numbers? Can you export to Excel?
Between numbers. Right. So messages between person A and B in the same PDF? The answer is no. My feeling now, if it turns out that a lot of people want that feature, and I realize that does come up a lot. Maybe I'll build in something to do that, but it seems to me that it would be hard to design the user interface to be extremely user friendly, and I'm trying to minimize the possibility of custodians making errors here. So my recommendation at present would be that you collect all of the messages with that particular person, and then just let the attorney redact what you don't want there.
Okay, that makes sense.
Oh, and Excel. I'm sorry. That was the second part of the question was Excel, right?
I was going back to make sure that yep, go ahead.
Yep. The answer is no, it doesn't export to Excel. However, if you really want it in the spreadsheet format, go ahead and drop me an email, help@legaltextcollector.com, and I can show you a secret handshake that would allow you to export everything as a SQLite database that you can then dump to Excel. But that's not a feature that is really ready, for people to actually use. But if you need that, let me know. I'll show you how to do it.
Okay, cool. I'm getting the drift that Ernesto is techie, so based on his questions. Bill, to answer your question, I had the same question about what do you do with it next? And basically, you're getting PDFs. So then you would treat the PDFs like you would any other document that you received,
right?
And then put it into whatever review tool you're using. So it's not going to be the answer that we all wish we had. In fact, when I sent the announcement last week about this topic, somebody in our industry replied and said, well, collecting's only half the problem, because we need a way to review them in the way that they were originally stored. And I reached out to one friend, and his company did not do that. So if you guys know of somebody in our industry that has a tool that you can review text messages, I did not do any searches yet to see if somebody's created it since last time I looked. But that would be cool if we could, if somebody's done that, Yeah. But otherwise, we're doing it old school. We're at least getting them in a format that's easily readable, understandable, redactable, and we can get it into, we can send, basically what I'm thinking is we send the zip file or a PDF or 2 or 3, whatever makes sense. We send whatever we need, like we always do, to the e-discovery provider, and have them upload it into the tool that we're using at the time, the review tool. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'll mention that the PDFs are searchable, so you'll get the text. Your standard processing tools will extract that just fine. I do caution that when you process one of these zips, you'll probably want to turn off deduplication for that particular zip, because what can happen is that when you have a group message, if it's with several people, and let's say there's an attachment to that, a funny GIF or what have you, that attachment will intentionally be duplicated, and that's for ease of copying out a particular person's conversation and not missing anything. So if you run it through deduplication, you won't lose every copy of that attachment, obviously, but it might appear that some conversations or some attachment folders are incomplete. So.
Okay. All right. Okay. Joe, I don't know if you're watching the comments because you're busy answering questions. So I just want to let you know that there's a bunch of comments about how cool this is.
Oh, thanks, everyone.
Looks like a great tool, nice one, especially for cross-border discovery to save collection costs. That's true. Bill says in future versions it would be nice to capture original metadata, especially date and time. Do you have a response to that?
Yeah, it may not have been visible that easily since we breezed through it, but date and time are there in the PDF, as well as the sender names as they appear in the phone's address book and the phone numbers. There are some subtle nuances that don't come up very often with matching names to phone numbers. And if you'd like to read more about it, there's a whole longish sort of article on my site.
Okay. All right.
But for the most part, it basically just does what you would expect it to do in that regard.
I remember Bill says great. I remember when I spoke in Iowa for the Iowa Paralegal Association last April. I attended somebody else's session, and it was all on social media. And when she got done with her presentation, there were 3 people right away that raised their hand and said, "How do you collect text messages?" And because I'd already talked to you, I gave them, I said, "I have a friend, and this is the name of his app." So I already told him about it. So I do think that there is an audience. There's people that are going to use this tool. So okay, so I want to bring you guys. I want to show you the handout that I made for this episode. I put the link in the description for this in Facebook. So basically, the handout itself is a couple of pages long, or the beginning of it, I should say. So I put in a bunch of links to Joe's. Let me make sure Joe's audio is on in case I say something silly. Bunch of links to stuff on Joe's site and that I thought was helpful. There's also a link on his site, and it's in here too, to download a sample collection so you can show it to your attorneys and see if it's okay with them. There's also conversation around the various apps that are not the standard messaging apps because of all the support requests that you've gotten, Joe. You've had to deal with some of those and learn more about, all people using different apps. And then...
Right. There.
Go ahead. Do you want to say something?
I'm sorry. I was just going to say there is a lot of variety in Android, depending on your carrier and your brand of phone, and even the models between the same brand can have some variations in how they handle messages that can sometimes cause problems. So it's unfortunately it's a bit of a complicated space.
Okay. Yeah, and that's related to the RCS down here that you told me about, right?
Right. So what's becoming a popular sort of moniker nowadays is RCS for rich content service, I believe, but it's basically an umbrella term for any number of variations that carriers and phone manufacturers are putting into their text messaging. You can actually think of maybe iMessage as being an early version of that before I think the term existed.
Right. So you guys, Joe told me about the RCS thing. I found definitions for you in case you're not aware. There's different kinds of text messages. And then I also found an article, which is in this handout, of the background of RCS. And it basically describes that there are no standards, which reminded me of our industry, e-discovery. But the last thing I did for you guys is I went out and found 20 cases that had a good amount of discussion around text messages. And I used one of my Fast Tip Friday tips to highlight the word text messages in every case. So there's 20 cases of in this PDF of, and I highlighted it for you. So I hope you find that helpful. Sonia is saying, check out Decipher Forensics. She thinks that they can pull down messages. You know them?
I have seen the Decipher Forensics tool. I'm not particularly familiar with it.
Okay.
But,
all right. Well, that's cool. All right. I think that's all I have for you guys today. I hope you found that helpful. I hope that Joe's app saves your day in the future.
Hope so.
And like Joe said, if you have any other questions, he's available. All the contact information is on his site. And he's a really nice guy, as you probably figured out. So thank you, Joe, so much for taking the time out today to go live with me. And thank you, everybody.
Well, thank you for having me.
Oh, Sonia's mentioning that they pull iPhone messages, so that might be an
Mhm.
alternative. So that's cool. All right. Thank you guys, and I'll see you next week.